good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Whichever part of the world and whatever time zone you are in, thank you for joining us for the 2021 edition of the Black Consciousness Festival. This year, we are inviting you to shift. Join with amazing people across the world as we explore the many ways we, as people of African descent, grow, cultivate, produce, share, and rebirth ourselves. Through our ancestral knowledge, historical legacy, pride, power, and practice, let's celebrate the individual and collective ways we navigate through life. Together, we continue to walk in pride, power, and practice. Enjoy the session.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. My name is Sean Samad. I'm the Content and Communications Director of the festival, and it is my pleasure to welcome this conversation this evening. Our lead this evening is going to be Dawn Marie Alexander. She's a 19-year-old writer currently pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies with a double minor in Literature and Film Studies at the University of the West Indies. Originally from South Trinidad, she enjoys reading, writing, and going on spontaneous adventures with friends and family. Her motto is Change Your Scheme, derived from theorist Jean Piaget, and she believes that learning and knowing is an active process, and to know you must actively seek change in your current schemes. Black consciousness is a passionate topic for Dawn Marie, and over the years she has learned to accept the truth and the past that has and will continue to shape her into who she is and who she will become. She stands out from the rest with her commendable self-acceptance and self-love, a true embodiment of Black consciousness. So welcome, Dawn Marie, and enjoy the conversation.
Welcome. Thank you so much. So, greetings to everyone, and welcome to the Black Consciousness Festival 2021. This year's overall theme is Shift, and today we're covering the topic Reframing Love, non-heteronormative experiences for people of African descent. With me here today is Chimee Adioha from Nigeria, the founder of Masculinity JA9, a means to question and approach what it means to be a man in Nigeria, and he's also an active worker in spaces for change in Lagos, Nigeria. So welcome, Chimee. How are you today?
Hi,
Well,
I'm
tonight.
well, thank you. Thank you, Dawn. Today. It's better we use today.
That's nice to hear. And I also want to welcome Kevin Leonce, originally from Trinidad, but now residing in the UK. He is the CEO and co founder of Best Gay Life, a lifestyle brand striving for social change funded by a commercial model. So, welcome, Kevin.
Thank you all. Hi, Dawn.
I think
Hi,
he's here.
Chimee.
Yes.
Hi,
Hi,
Kevin.
everyone.
Good to see you.
I think. Yes. Hi,
Can everyone
nice to
hear
see
me?
you, Kevin.
Yes,
Hi,
I can hear you,
everyone.
Kevin.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Okay. So, as a queer person in Trinidad, also being the president of Pride UE, I know that anything out of convention, especially for people of African descent, it's kind of heavily frowned upon and can put us at a great disadvantage out here. I'm honored to be given the opportunity to discuss with you all, and I hope we can all empathize in the end. So, to get us going, I have a very general, almost superficial question to get us started. So I'm putting it out to you all. Chime, you can answer first if you'd like. How has your sexuality impacted your daily social and romantic lives? In your country.
Um, okay, number one, I grew up in Nigeria, and as we all know, Nigeria is a very difficult and a very homophobic society. And but now I live in the US, and I'm beginning to see things differently. I'm beginning to see how crucial and how important the issue of race is in the US than every other place. And then these days I now compare my country, Nigeria, which is an embodiment of problems like sexuality, problems like corruption, problems like ethnicity and tribalism. And while growing up and living in Nigeria, I grew up being I was a happy child. Sexuality wasn't anything for me. Sexuality wasn't pronounced. I knew I was queer. I knew I'm not like in the heteronormative sector, but I felt this. I felt the definitions weren't there, and the family that I grew up with didn't have any problem with. There was no division around sexuality. So as I grew up, like being like 24, 23, and understanding this concept, it was like a boom. Like everyone was talking about being gay. Everyone was talking about sexuality in the country, and then that was when I began to understand and feel it, like, okay, this is it, this means gay. I've been like this, but I didn't know the definition of what this is. So but then I think for every queer person in Nigeria, it's a very difficult situation. But then sometimes you also find out that queerness is illegal in Nigeria, but it's somehow classed. There's a problem of class. So you have higher chances of being arrested, you have higher chances of being criminalized if you live in the suburbs, if you live in the slums, if you live in the low class areas, compared to someone who lives on the islands, on the highbrows, who has some connections here and there. And so you are usually very, very privileged. So around, I think in 2020, there was a raid on queer people in the country, like 57 people, 57 boys who were arrested in a hotel, and these were boys who were being themselves, who were just living their authentic lives, and who were happy and who had a party. They were all arrested, and they had issues and court cases for a period of like up to 1 year. And there were organizations in Nigeria, LGBTQ organizations in Nigeria, that kept pushing that. And then at some time, they regained some of their freedom, which was a very crucial and heavy push for the organizations working around LGBTQ rights in Nigeria. So I'm bringing this to. So basically, for me personally, my queerness revolves around my personality. Like I feel there's a discrimination. I also feel there's a problem. I also feel there's a level of oppression just around me, within my household, within my environment. So when I leave my house, I don't feel my sexuality is a problem. So it's something I just deal with personally. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciated that answer. I really like seeing this insight, how you really think of it as part of your identity. Yes, you don't really think of it as anything other than who you are. And, it's not something that is totally taken over your life. I really appreciate that. Kevin, can you answer that question? How has your sexuality impacted your daily social and romantic life?
Sure thing. Um, I think there has been different stages and phases of impact over the years. When I look at my time when I was younger and living in Trinidad, I think that the impact was higher in the sense that while I was able to come to terms slowly with my true self, I understood that there were still boundaries within how you can express that. Coming from a very religious home, but also coming from a country where it was still and still has a high stigma in that sense. So my interactions in my private and personal life were very guarded, quite heavily in that sense. It was more about ensuring that, I had that front, that sort of facade, so to speak. Um,
Mhm.
and I think as I moved away and moved to the UK, slowly but surely over the years, that began to chip away. And then came the intersection and impact of not just personal and private life, but then seeping into professional lives. But on the personal side of things, moving into a country where, while it's still uh, more accepting, there were still scenarios where it was put under the spotlight, um, where I also had to consider not just my sexuality, but also my blackness. We there was an interesting nuance and intersection between those two that was beginning to exist in that manner. And what I found that surfaced in that uh, journey was quite interesting. I saw where our Black, Brown, and people of color communities or interactions with each other, when it came down to sexuality and color, was very different in that sense. The journey was so guarded. And I saw where, for me, I had a slight, not anger, but frustration, because I still interacted with people and saw where they were so guarded, like if they were back in their home countries, respective home countries. And to me, I kept saying in my head and in my mind, it's just like, we've made this journey for a reason. We're here in a society that is predominantly more accepting, but I never got to understand the link and impact that it had on the cultural side of things. Whereas the nuclear family, the remote family, in that sense, while you may not be in a country where it's legally okay, you're still in a country where your immediate connections and community still have that view on sexuality itself. And I think that was very interesting to see how it played out. So for me, I went from having that very guarded impact to being able to be a bit more understanding of myself, but also to start helping others in that journey as I interacted with them in the UK.
Okay, thank you. Um, so given that you're both away from your original countries and out into these new countries, well, new to me, what are some of the stereotypes that you faced, because of your sexuality and more so even because of your race? Um, Chimmy, you can start us off. Kevin, you can follow.
Sure.
Yeah. So if I understand your question, you're asking about like if there has been like some kind of stereotypes that we have faced as because of our race, moving from our previous country and to the new country. Yes. You mean
Yeah,
around
like what are
sexuality? Do you
some of
mean
the stereotypes, sexuality and race? Like I know putting the both together can be kind of dangerous, given that
yeah,
sometimes just being black is an issue. So
exactly.
putting that on top of, not being heteronormative, what are some of the
Mm-hmm.
stereotypes that you faced, even if in your own original country and the country that you've traveled to? How has that
Yeah,
been for you? Like, what are the stereotypes that you faced?
yeah. So, for example, when I'm in my country, Nigeria, so the problems that I face is usually no one talks about race because we are all fucking black. And you're gonna look at me another way if you see me maybe we having earrings or maybe just dressing unusually. That's someone is gonna look at me, oh, how why is he dressing like this? Is he gay or what's the problem? Is there a problem? So those are like indications and issues in Nigeria. Or maybe you speak a particular language. Oh, where are you from? Oh, you're from this particular tribe. Oh, those arrogant people. So these are the kind of stereotypes that happen in Nigeria. So moving to the US, I came to the USA for school, and I'm studying English and writing studies. And in my field, what most of our discussions, our topics are revolving around race. the issue of language diversity, the issue of accents, the issue of standard and non-standard English, and how these issues are racial or discriminatory, or just have some kind of nuances that I've never known about before. So it's like a new curve for me. So here, personally, I've not experienced any form of racism before that I know, because I assume people here are smart and are aware of racism. So even if they tends to be racist, it's not liable, it's not, they don't have the energy yet to like show it. So in the way that I see it, as an angry black man with peanut color skin, with kinky hair, no one has like given any sign. Like, I mean, everyone seems to be liberal. So for me, I've not really seen any form of discrimination so far. But what comes to my mind when I was coming to America, what came to my mind was like, okay, it's obvious that I'm going to feel this racism that I've never felt before. And but I mean, even in America, as liberal as America can be, there is still there are still homophobic people. There are still people who don't want you because you are walking like a girl. There are people who don't want you because you flutter your hands as you move, as you walk. So sometimes I feel, okay, I'm in America and America feels safe, but am I really safe? Um, in Nigeria, I was struggling with, okay, queer people are being suppressed. Queer people are being There's always a clamp down on this particular queer group of queer people. Now I'm in America, and I feel clamp down on race. I also feel clamp down on queer people, certain queer people and queer groups across the world, across America. So it's across the board, and sometimes I just feel like it's not even a country specific issue. Most these days it's not a country specific issue. It's a global problem. Homophobia is globally a problem, as well as racism. So I try to balance it. I try to like gauge it in a way that I analyze what issues that I have faced in Nigeria and what issues I am facing in America. Somehow they are the same, but what matters most is differently faced there than it is here. Is you face it differently here, but it's actually revolving around the same oppression and suppression.
So you would definitely say that as one of the struggles that you face regularly. This is it's still an issue of oppression. This is still this is your
Exactly. It
biggest
still
struggle
revolves
with regards
exactly.
to
It still revolves around whether
yeah.
sexuality, whether racism is some kind of, some people trying to tell you that, oh, we are a little bit higher than you are, or we are this better and you are lesser like this. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can echo some of what Chimee has
Yeah.
said.
I know what you
Looking at
yes.
that range of diaspora. So I'll start from first being living in Trinidad. I've also Sean and I have talked about this so many times about the trading of a white colonial slave master for a black one, where
Mm-hmm.
in our cultures we still, while we eradicated the physical um, points of oppression, we reintroduced it in a classist system, particularly in Trinidad, where the color of your skin and where you went to school and how you spoke then became associated with what you were allowed to be a bit more palatable with. So for some, like myself, I didn't, I wasn't exposed to quite a lot because of my associations of who I went to school with and my circle of friends at that time. So I lived in a complete bubble where, like when someone said to me, it's like, how come you've never faced that level of abuse or racism? I'm just like, I don't know. It never happened in that sense. It was only as I grew older, probably especially when I left college and moved into tertiary level education and started traveling a bit more out of the West, as we call it. Then you started seeing those sort of like really blatant um, signs where, let's not even talk about sexuality. It was just, just the color of your skin was just, it was just that was it. It was like, don't bring sexuality into the equation because you're dead. As in, not literally, but it's like you're just done, because by the time they get to you, when they hit sexuality, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh child, that's it. And when I moved to the UK, one of the things I saw was that got replaced, mainly for a system and a society that was more accepting on the surface of things. And what started bubbling was there were few and far occasions when you would have that type of, I would call it, physical confrontation, where be walking down the streets, or you're going into a club, or you're about to go into a restaurant, and someone may make a comment on, your particularly your sexuality. I think when it came down to my blackness, I think I was also spared because I at that time did not really venture beyond London. So London itself was very, and still is very, multicultural in that aspect. So we were spared a few things where it went from being physical and confrontational to being micro. And that's where I saw that prevalence slip in, where when you combined it with your sexuality, it was just a whole different game. One of the things that as Black people, we're always told we're very confrontational, we're very angry, but if we have to describe Emily, she's passionate and she's really good at what she does. And this is why we should have her at the table as opposed to John, who's Black, because when he talks, he's just angry with the world. And then you start combining sexuality in that equation, and there's always
Mm-hmm.
these subtle things of. For me, I remember for many years, I used to hate Monday mornings because of the I used to call it the water cooler effect, because that first 15 minutes when you get into to work, it's like everybody's like, oh, how are you? What did you do on the weekend? Oh, my partner and I did this. Um, and you would just pray that someone didn't clock it to the point where they would say, "You mean your girlfriend?" Um, and I think I went through a journey as well in my life, which was tied to my career, where when I look back over the period of time, it took me some time to really unpack the nuances of my intersection of being Black and being gay or queer. But in that journey, I saw where I became more outspoken. I saw where I was able to, not hide or have those sort of triggering effects or impacts with scenarios. Um, but what I would say on the whole is that, Black Lives Matter uprising did quite a lot for everyone across the globe. It brought
Mm-hmm.
a lot of conversations that were under the surface, right to the top. In some countries,
Yeah.
we saw where people, somebody will actually look you in the face and say derogatory things, whether because of your sexuality or the color of your skin, or to others where they existed in microaggressions where you were
Mm-hmm.
bypassed for a promotion, or as a senior leader, when you sit in a boardroom, everyone looks at you and be like, oh, I'm having a coffee. I'm like, oh yeah, I got one myself, thanks. you know um and there were things that you saw over the period of time that you kind of looked, and you kind of clocked and you'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
do I address this? My aunt is a senior leader in the healthcare system, and she was describing to me at one point when there was a fire on one of the wards, and she was the most senior person there, and the fire marshal refused to speak to her, not only because she was Black, but because she was a woman. Even when her more junior manager said, that's the most senior person at the hospital, that's who you need to be speaking to. And still, there was that kind of very subtle,
Bias.
in your face kind of moment. And it's just like, how do you address those? Do you call those out? Because again, whenever we've seen those moments, especially in countries, and it probably is the same for Chimee in the US, when you call those behaviors out, in first world countries, we move from being okay to being the aggressor. We
Mm-hmm.
move from being okay to being that angry Black person. that angry black queer person because we've actually called that elephant in the room. And I've known, when I look at, Sean and I have always discussed this as well, the nuances of British colonialism that have been, rooted in our history. You get to see where that bubbles and surfaces in areas. You get to see it so much in terms of the way people move. I go to the supermarket every day to get a bacon sandwich. And I kid you not, every same day, the security guard shadows me to the front door because I go in with my pajamas and a hoodie. And I don't have a bag and I just pick up a sandwich, I pay for it with my card, and I walk out the store. Um, what that then interpreted for me was then me building a mechanism in place where I would always take my receipt. Because to me, I'm just like, the day you take God out of your thoughts and step to me for this sandwich, £1.25, we're gonna have problems. And in my mind, I'm like, well, let's not do that. Take your receipt. So by me taking that receipt and walking and being visibly showing it while I'm walking, then allowed him to step off. But it's like these are the types of things where if I had taken in that moment to go up to him and be like, "Do you have a problem?" It would be like, "Oh no, I'm doing my job. It wasn't about you. I actually wasn't. I know you weren't even on my radar, kind of thing." And it's just like, dude, every day I go into the supermarket, and as I stroll past, you start shadowing me. I mean, what is it? So I think those are some of the things that I experienced in that sense. I also saw it when sometimes one takes preference over the other. Sometimes your queerness is a bit of a support bubble and it helps. And there are other times when, your race or class or blackness becomes the issue. If you're going into, I've seen where we've gone into, queer spaces and it's fine. But when you go to the bar to order a drink, you're waiting 10 times more than someone who is non-black. And of course, in that scenario, again, if you call it out to be like, well, I've been waiting here all this time, the bartender or the manager will be like, we're so sorry, there's 50 people in front of here. So it's kind of like who the eye catches. And it's just like, well, there's a trend because if I'm right in front of the bar, I'm in front of your face, and there comes Emily from behind me. Hi, but you serve Emily, or you serve someone else. And I think you saw that so much seeping through to the point whereas it didn't matter about your sexuality, it mattered about your race. You saw it when you had to stand in a queue and, sometimes you're going into places and they would ask you to do extra searches. What's in your pockets? Can you take your jacket off, etc. Whereas someone else who may not be dressed in that manner, i.e., thin jacket, light suit. Sure, go on in, no problem. There you go. Um, and that's what I saw, and sometimes still continue to see. I know we're now slowly coming out of versions of lockdown, and now getting back to re-socializing. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like now on this side. But those are some of the things that I experienced, um, especially within the UK, in terms of those interactions of how they came about. And they're quite crafty in how they approach it because it's always done in a manner where if you confront it, you're the crazy one. If you say something, you're the angry one. If you challenge it, you know, you're the problem. It's not them. It's not the behavior, in their mind, that wasn't what was taking place. And it's almost as if there's a level of tone deafness that happens all the time with it. So yeah, that was sort of like my experiences moving from Trinidad to the UK in terms of how did it impact, or how did it surface in terms of the things I saw when it came down to, you know, race and sexuality.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I empathize with you. Being from Trinidad, I have that experience that you were speaking about firstly, and a lot of these stereotypes here because I guess someone who isn't heteronormative, they tend to, victimize them a lot. They tend to, villainize them a lot. And also, when you are a person, especially like as a person who, as me, as a woman, as a non-heteronormative woman in Trinidad, and if I was to confront someone about it, they have this stereotype that women, especially African women, they're very loud and rowdy, and every time they come,
Yes.
they're here to
Yeah.
argue. So even in the
Yeah.
first world countries, we have that issue, but even in Trinidad, we have this still underlying issue, and it has a lot to do with these stereotypes that are formed, very deeply rooted from back in the days of colonization. All of these things, these in colonialism, those are the things that are really deeply rooted in our society that are causing these stereotypes. Yes,
And
I
there
really understand where you're coming from, and I empathize with you. So,
And Dawn, there's one
yes,
thing to add to that, and it's that's something that I think we all need to unpack and start going and really understanding, because it's that weaponization of words, it's that weaponization of painting characters. When you look at, for myself, I was quite excited when I saw the transition of the British royal family to one that moved to being accepting of a non-white person in any form or fashion into the royal family. And it was like, wow, they're moving with the times, and they're also showing that love can exist across gender, not, sorry, not gender, but race. And it's like, right, if we can get past the race, at some point we're going to get past the gender. So that's going to be awesome. But then what I saw
that's
was,
a great.
and still now it continues, the weaponization of how the media has portrayed one against the
Yeah,
other. And I think that's where the impacts of colonialism still exist, because we traded those slave masters, and what they did was they created those subtle whispers, which then crafted that story of being black is aggressive, being black and queer is not great. You know, these are the things that are associated with a black person. When you see them coming down the street, you should walk, you should cross the road. Whenever they speak, they're angry by nature and all of these other things. I watched, or we watched, the world watched actually, as Meghan Markle, there was somebody that did a collage of all of the dresses that she wore versus all of the dresses that Princess Kate wore. And there were very few differences between the two. But when you saw what the media said, everything was quite positive for Princess Kate. But when it came down to Meghan, it was always it
yeah,
was so bashing. How could you have someone on radio still be talking and referring to a child as an animal, and you think that's okay in any form or fashion? How? And then, of course, when it was challenged, that's not what I meant. I'm so sorry. I was referring to something else. And it's just like, how? Where in your mind do you get off on connecting a child or a
yeah.
human being
They have
to an
this
animal?
tendency to gaslight us. Yes,
And that's where, that's what we see. We see that weaponization of words. We see that, that era of Trumpism was the same thing as well, where you saw where they constantly use those. That's their war field now. And I think, as black people, but also as black queer people, we have a lot to give, but we
yeah,
also have a lot to learn. And we have to learn that warfare of words. That's where the battle is happening. You watch it all across, whether it's someone
we do.
who's come
Yeah,
out or whether it's someone who's taking a stance against racism. Before you know it, the media and people around them start wording things in a very sort of microaggressive, targeting and weaponizing words. It's like they're very angry. We notice when they drop their kids to school, they do this, and this, and it's just like they already start building that picture and painting it and phrasing it to the point where by the time they're finished, people go, this is why we don't trust black people. This is why black and queer people have issues, and it's not the case.
yeah. All right. I definitely understand what you're saying. There's actually been there's actually this whole thing, where these white people, well, white people think that, it's actually their burden to civilize Black people. And if they really, stray away and tend to be liberated, that is where they decide to build up in these stereotypes. Yes. I know in Chimee, I know you definitely relate to what he's saying. Do you have anything to say with regards to what Kevin
I
was
think my
saying?
context. Yeah, I understand Kelvin, but I think my context is actually different. Not I understand Kelvin, but my concept is different. I I like to use a lot of my facts or get a lot of my facts from Nigeria, which is the country where I mostly grew up. And so the context in Nigeria is actually maybe very different. And for example, we don't talk about Black issues. Like I
Yeah.
said, we don't talk about Black issues in Nigeria. There are many other issues and problems that we talk about, like queerness. So we feel we feel the problem with queerness. We strongly believe, or my personal strongly held belief, is that homophobia is coming from a place of toxic masculinity, which is what we have been trying. So in 2016, I founded Masculinity Nigeria. And so I was interested in using media and research to understand and redefine what it means to be a man in Nigeria. And because we felt homophobic people are mostly men who are so misogynistic, who are so patriarchal, who are so like oppressive, and this is where it starts, because people, men who
Yeah,
have their full
following this
senses,
implicit
and men
convention.
who prefer and respect equality. It's very difficult to see those kind of men being homophobic and being criminal. And so what we are doing. For example, if you carry out a research in Nigeria trying to understand what do people think about men, so you'll be seeing responses like men don't use lip balm, men can't use umbrellas, men can't wear pink, men can't dance in public, men can do this, men can do that. And that is like, but then there, because we are, so I would say it's because of luck and privilege. So in a year like 2020 and 2021, many boys are coming out in Nigeria using the social media and digital technology to challenge and advocate and understand, make people understand better what masculinity actually means, what it means to be a man, using comedy, using fashion. And I think that is also part of our problems, and that is where we start to, sometimes we don't, because Nigeria is it's illegal to be a queer man or a gay person in Nigeria. It's a 14-year jail term. And so most people are worried and scared of starting a conversation about LGBTQ rights. So another strategy that we found was starting the masculinity conversation. And so why starting the masculinity conversation? We can use that conversation to penetrate into, to correct men who tend to be senseless men, especially in Nigeria. And so I think that's working a bit, because men obviously prefer to listen to men. In a place like Africa, in a place like Nigeria, men obviously prefer to listen to men than listening to women. So we try to engage boys. We want boys to talk more. We want men to speak more. So we've been building this kind of a coalition, this emergist group of boys who are ready to speak out, who are ready to speak about their problems, who are ready to talk to men, to their fellow men, who are ready to say to men, it's okay to hug your fellow men. It's okay to cry. It's okay to have a lip gloss on because your lips are dry and cracking. Yeah, so I think when we start this, we try to build men who are compassionate, men who are who have emotion but not being emotionless. Men who, yeah, so this is how, so when we have men like this, men who are thinking straight, men who understand equality, she's off. So when we have men like this, men who understand equality, men who understand the concept of freeness and freedom, we try to also in another way solve the issue of homosexuality and anti-gay whatever, anti-gay law and all the stupidity happening in the country. Yeah, so I think Dawn has gone. Who knows
Hopefully,
what
I'm
happened to her?
actually here. Yeah, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Okay, cool. So I just summarize with we by trying to build this kind of men, we are also trying in another way or using another format to kill the problem of homophobia in the country.
Yeah. So keeping on that topic, I know that we're all actually very involved in LGBTQ plus organizations. So Kevin, you can probably give us a little insight. What experiences influenced your establishment of your group?
sure thing. And when you say establishment of the group, in what sense?
As in, what really influenced you to start Basque Life?
Ah, really good one. So I think for my component, I had this idea and concept in my mind, going back maybe 10 years when I first started uni when when I was in the UK, um, about an underwear business or underwear brand that I saw. And it was really from the point of I bought some products from the company and then they would send me all the marketing. And I was looking at the marketing while I was being a marketing student again. And I was just like, this is awful. I can do a better job of this. Um, so I started to curate and look over the time using their emails and kind of like just thinking about, well, what comes next, so to speak. How do you start? Where do you start from? And it was an idea that I really kind of like put to the side for some time. And then um, it just bubbled to the surface when I met my partner at that time, and we were just talking about stuff, and he said, "Well, why don't you do it?" So Basket Life started, interesting enough, from a very male focused um, scenario, um, based on the products that we wanted to launch. But very quickly after that, we realized that, you know, there needed to be a bit more beyond Beskie Life in that sense. We started asking ourselves the question, it's just like, when you hear the name Beskie Life, you don't think underpants. So that led us on a journey, of wanting to explore and learn a lot more about our communities and understand the nuances of those communities and how they intersect with each other. You've got the Black, brown, and people of color communities within the LGBT remit, and they are so underrepresented and underestimated in comparison to the privilege that is, given or shared to some other communities. And that led us to be on a journey of reshaping the organization or reshaping the company to the point where, we now describe ourselves as a social purpose driven uh, company that's underpinned by a commercial model, because we chose six social purpose pillars, as we call them, which were based on our beliefs of how we can help to contribute to not just the conversations, but to the advancement of equalities within our communities, but also ensure while we're doing that, we're also, being able to enjoy products and services that are curated for us. So those pillars are centered around LGBTQ plus mental health,
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, LGBTQ plus homelessness,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, and also policy and engagement. And when it took us 18 months of researching, 18 months of having conversations with our communities and learning about our communities to really begin to understand some of the nuances which led to those conversations in that sense, and realizing that those six pillars have an intersection across all of our communities. It doesn't matter, mental health impacts us all. Black Lives Matter itself, whether you're part of the community or not, you're still part of that conversation in terms of, are you sitting at a table with privilege, and what are you doing to help lift and amplify the voices of Black, brown, and people of color? I was on a call with a VC in the US, and she said to me, and I really liked her approach. She's like, nope, we're not underrepresented, we're underestimated. She's
Yeah.
like, she was like, we have representation. She's like, they underestimate us. And I found power in that, to the point where, I now start describing, this is our communities are underestimated, they're not underrepresented in that sense. We're there, the media doesn't show it, but we're there. So I think that's what led to
Yeah.
that part of the journey of forming that. And as we look forward, we've been constantly reviewing where we are as an organization. Currently, some of the products and services we have are still very male agnostic, to the point whereas we're looking at how we not just review those, but ensure that we're telling a story that's more reflective of our communities. We're telling a story that goes beyond the definition of men in that sense. It's really interesting when you have those conversations within our communities, because people talk about, for us it was just like, you know we are gay men, but it's just like, no, there's a nuance behind that in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity. So for us, it was learning about, for those who identify as men or for those who identify as male, because we also have to be considerate that when we're talking about men or women, we also have to consider our non-binary communities. We also have to consider our
Yeah,
trans
consider
communities.
everyone. Yes,
And
well, that's
it's,
the one big community. Yeah, I
It's
definitely understand where
intersectional.
you're coming from.
yeah,
Yeah, I know where you're coming from with regards to that, because even here in Trinidad, dealing with our community here, Pride UE, right here in UE, we have a lot of people that we don't really consider. A lot of asexuals tend to feel left out, a lot of transsexuals tend to feel left out. So I definitely know where you're coming from, and I really appreciate that you understand that and tend to and you actually plan to expand your business to offer that to everyone else and be all inclusive. So I know that Chimee gave us a lot of information with regards to masculinity in Nigeria. Yes.
Mhm.
um what are some of the concerns that you face with this group? I know Kevin was telling us some of his. So, what are some of the concerns that you faced?
Okay, so what we are doing now, we are basically working online. No one knows us. Like, we don't want to put people on our, we don't want to put our face on people. Um, what we are doing basically is using strategic media content to just advocate and counter issues around masculinity in Nigeria, and also in the same way using that opportunity to talk about homophobia, but not, we don't label ourselves as an anti-LGBTQ group, but we just understand the fact that these are issues, these are connected, and from point A we can get to point B, and from B we can get to Z. And so we are basically online. So most of the what we get mostly from Nigeria is like, most people appreciate our work. Most people are excited that they are so surprised that, oh wow, so this is also in Nigeria, where so boys like me, young boys who are just coming up, young men are excited to be like, okay, I'm willing to join this. I'm willing to be part of you guys. I need to do this. But yeah, and I feel their excitement and joy, because when I was growing up, if I saw something like that, I mean, I would jump in. I wouldn't mind becoming their president, even if they don't want me to. So it's exciting that young boys and men, and even women, are joining the group and understanding the conversations, are interested in, like, oh, really? There's something called masculinity. Oh, is it something like we have feminism? Or, oh, really? These are boys, these are men fighting for men. So I mean, I'm excited when I see that. It's always like, but then I also believe that there are people who don't like. We've put up some pictures or images around, maybe, for example, saying men should also help their wives, or men should learn how to change diapers, and men should do this, men should be free, men should hug their fellow men should say I love you to their fellow men without being scared. I mean, so some men, some toxic men come to attack us. Where it'll be like, "You shut up! You want to turn everybody to a gay person? You want to turn everybody to a gay man? No, that won't happen. Men will always be men. Boys will be boys." Yeah, so we also get some kind of that, but I think, but it's unnecessary for me. I don't regard them because what we get, the positive comments we get are like 90%, and the negatives are like 10%. So
Yeah.
what we are doing now is trying to think about institutionalizing this project or institutionalizing this group in more reformed, official manner, because we started up like a casual social media platform, just making noise, just trying to let people hear us, trying to say boys can cry, boys can do this. But I mean, it's not we are not particularly institutionalized. But I also see that when the kind of passion we started with, if we happen to be institutionalized, we might lose that passion and energy.
Yes.
So yeah, so most times I'm also in the mix of should we be serious, like be serious, or should we just continue our online advocacy, just freestyle boys making noise on social
I
media?
mean, we
So
definitely need to be heard, and you all definitely need to be heard. I think that a lot of people
yeah.
tend to underestimate that. Men have emotions too. They tend to put that aside. Definitely not take that into consideration. And I feel like that's a big issue. Toxic masculinity is a big thing. Misogyny,
Exactly.
misogyny is a big thing. I feel like we all need to actually take that into consideration and put our men's emotions first and foremost. So,
Yeah.
with all that, I know we're running out of time, so I have two more questions for you all. So let's see how we can get through it. Um, my first question before the end: what are the intersections between LGBTQ plus and Black that those who are neither may never understand? Like, what are the real things that you think that once you're not Black or non-heteronormative, what are the things that people wouldn't really understand? Kevin, you can lead us here.
Yeah, I think Kevin is going to be a good person to answer that question.
I
Yeah.
think, thank you. No, I think there's quite a lot to unpack there. I think the first thing that comes with it is our uniqueness, our sass, or level of fierceness, and that comes from that in itself is deeply rooted in our genetics and hereditary over a period of time. You know, considering what our ancestors went through, where they weren't allowed to express themselves. They weren't allowed to, they were bounded and chained, and went through so much of aggression and abuse to the point where there was no way to exhale, and that's where the beginning of Carnivale started from. It was that expression of self that came out, um, and that's what you see in most Black people. As an intersection that a lot of non sort of like people in that way don't understand it. For them, it comes across as aggression. It comes across as being extra. You know, it's a level of confidence that they're not used to, and it's because we've had to overcompensate for so much else in that sense. I think there's also an underestimation of who we are as a people. I think because of what history and the media has done over time, you know, most associations with um, being Black was on the basis of, let's say, for example, in sports, yeah, y'all could run because that's what we're used to doing all the time. You know, you can do all of those sorts of, extra curricular
Mm-hmm.
activities that are much more physical. But oh no, you can't be a chess player. You can't play golf. You can't be a swimmer. That's for the white folks. What are you doing? And I think they don't realize that we're also human, and there are people who are interested in sports and activities based on just their likeness in that sense. I also think people are afraid of us, and I think it's because over the years they have realized that extra, that sass, that way of overcompensating You know, when you grew up, we were taught education is the key, and education was the key because that was our weapon to be able to have a seat at the table. You were taught you had to be, you had to fight twice as hard to get half of what they had. So in our minds, every day is a battle. I was talking in our POC network this afternoon, just a couple of hours ago, and I was saying that what people don't understand is what Black people have to go through, but also Black queer people. Every single morning you get up, it's putting that armor on. It's putting that face on of, if somebody says something to me, how am I going to respond to it? Am I going to give them some sass this morning? Am I going to let them have it, as we say in Trinidad? I'm ready for you this morning. Or am I going to rise above it and find another route? And that's what we face every day when we step on a bus, when we step in public transport, when we're going to our cars, when we're going to the supermarkets, when we're going to our jobs, when we sit at our table, all of those things happen. And it's this constant sort of like defense mechanism. You can't sit alone at an office table at lunchtime, because then, oh yeah, you're always angry. You don't socialize with people. It's just like, you all don't understand my culture, so why would I socialize with you? I don't want to spend my lunchtime trying to explain my blackness and my queerness to you. Go do the work. I don't want to do that. So that's why I'm not going to sit there and be part of those superficial conversations. You go ahead, have those conversations, Karen. I'm not there for that. And I think there's a lot of those things that come up in that surface in terms of that approach. So I think those are some of the things that I kind of like noticed when it came down to lack of understanding, and sometimes even a bit of tone deafness, because when these issues are brought, or we share them, because everyone is always, tell me I want to be a better person, tell me I want to be a better ally. And then when you start talking about it, it's just like, you hear the first thing is just like, but I have Black gay friends. It's just like, good, but when I scroll through your social media channel, I don't see none of those people in it.
Yeah.
I don't
This
see you
the
lifting and
friend.
amplifying voices of Black and queer people. I'm not
Yeah.
seeing you using your platform to be like, hey, here is Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah is a queer Black engineer or a queer Black artist. Go buy her work. I'm not seeing you doing that, but you're
Not
doing it for your white
It
friends.
happens only on Pride Month. After Pride Month,
Yeah.
everyone goes back
You're
to their
Yes.
right.
shells.
Yeah.
Pride Month is the only month
Yeah.
you really see all of these people coming out. You'd never know that they were there for the
Yeah.
rest of the months in the
And
year.
after Pride
Right.
Month, they go back to their shelves.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly how it is. I know where you're coming from. So Chimee, would you have any?
Um, I, I yeah, I don't really have much to say around that topic.
Yeah.
I think Kevin has done justice to to that
Mm.
question.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Well, as we near the end, I have one more question for you all to really stay
Okay.
through to the team.
Okay.
In
Cool.
what ways can LGBTQ plus and Black communities shift together for us to create a stronger community and well allies across the board?
For me, I think there is need for example, for places for somewhere like Nigeria, there's need for some kind of the community is already there, so we don't need more communities. There's no need of multiplicity in creating new communities. So I just think there should be need for advocacy. There should be a heightened or a higher degree of advocacy for everyone. I mean, it's hard for somewhere like Nigeria. I like to talk about Nigeria because I mean that is where it hits most. And for somewhere like Nigeria, it's hard to continue advocating. And so for people like us for people who might not majorly live in Nigeria or who are queer people but who don't live in Nigeria, so it's also an opportunity for them to speak, because I mean, speak for the people in Nigeria who cannot speak, because it's a problem. I wouldn't imagine if I there are things I say because I'm in the US, and there are things I can't say if I'm in Nigeria. There are things I can't do if I'm in Nigeria, and there are things I can do when I'm in the US. And so I think there's a leverage or there's an advantage or some kind of benefit that allows you to speak more about these issues that bother us. So I think everything, whatever that we should be doing, should revolve around more and more and more advocacy, because that is how it
Yeah.
works.
That's what
And
we need
learning,
advocates,
yeah,
yes.
yeah, and learning, understanding, and acknowledging and exploring new strategies and new styles that
Yeah.
can help the shift.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that is what I feel.
Yeah, definitely. I understand. I empathize with you there. Kevin, really quickly, you have anything to say? Do you think that we need more communities? Although, Chimee is saying that we have enough communities. What do you think?
I think we need to understand our communities. I think we need to understand the intricacies of our blackness and the intersection of being LGBTQ plus or being queer or gay, but also understanding that can be non-binary, that can be
Yeah,
poly, that can be pansexual, that can be
fluidity.
trans. We need
Hmm.
to understand that we are all one. We also need to understand the intricacies when it comes down to um, neurodivergence of
Yeah,
when that autistic black person is not crazy, they're autistic. We need to really understand the
Hmm.
intricacies and nuances of what starts as our foundation as being black, and then the layers that we add to it of whether you're a black queer trans man or a black queer non-binary person
yeah,
who has who's neurodivergent, etc. And I think we need to really tap into the strength and power that we have. One thing that I looked at during the Black Lives Matter uprising was great. We've got the activists on the street, but where are
Hmm.
educated blacks?
you're
Where are those
right.
people who are championing and sitting in those boardrooms and going, do you hear them outside? Do you hear that noise? They're not going away. And here's what we need to see from you as a company. We need to see more representation in your senior leadership that's representative of our communities. We need to see that represented in the way we are treated. Where are those conversations happening? And I think we need to really start looking at our black economy. People talk about, what do you mean about the black economy? The Jewish community has had the strongest ecosystem from the dawn of time, and no one says anything about it. They build that ecosystem where they help and support each other, from banking to social networking to how they have community outreach. And I think that's what I would like to see us doing a lot more when it comes down to our black community. Just like, what, if I'm black and straight, you know what? I see you, honey. You're black. So that's all I need to know. You black. You is black. So we is black. So that means when I see you being attacked, whether it be for your sexuality, whether it be for your gender, I'm a stand for you because you
Yeah,
are black.
we
Because
really need
we
that
are
advocacy.
one. And I
We
think
really
that's where
get
we need to start from.
Yeah, I definitely know where you're coming from. We all share the same sentiments. We really think that we really need to come up for each other. We really need to be advocates for each other, allies for each other. Yes, I really understand what you're saying. See each other, value each other. Yes.
Hmm.
So I was really enlightened by this conversation. I know our viewers have been too. Thank you both, Kevin and Shemaya, for offering your time, knowledge, and experience. I really appreciate it. So with all that being said, thank you once again for coming out, and thanks to our viewers for viewing and tuning into Reframing Love, non-heteronormative experiences for people of African descent. So I want to wish you all a very good night, evening, morning, or wherever you are in the world. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank you so
you,
much,
Dawn.
everyone. Bye for
Thank
now.
you, Kevin.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Mhm.
To do it from tomorrow night, then we could run it like that.